I worked as a Walmart cashier for a little over a year. I quit in August of 2015, when I went away to college. As a cashier, you see a lot of people in a day, especially at Walmart. And after a while, you don't even see people's faces when you look at them. But there are some people that you see so often, you start to recognize and sometimes learn their names. There was this one guy, always in the same Green Bay Packers hoodie and Chicago Cubs baseball cap, that would often seek out my line no matter how long it was, just so he could stare at me and rarely say a word. Whenever he did say something to me, he would always lean across the register to get closer to my face. He always gave me a really bad vibe, but when I asked other cashiers about him, they said he had never been weird around them. One of the girls even said he was a close family friend. After that, I dropped the issue. One night, after I'd been there about a year, I was working a 2 to 11 shift. Those shifts were always the worst, because you would be there for 3, sometimes 4, front-end managers, CSM. But also because it takes a chunk out of your day where you can actually do anything. So I am down on the self-checkout. It's about 10:15. So I'm counting the minutes until I can shut it down at 10 till 11. The creepy guy comes in the front door and makes a beeline for me at the self-check podium. When I see him come in, I instantly get nervous. He walks up and says, "Can I still buy a phone card in electronics?" I told him I only worked as a cashier on the front end, so I didn't know anything about electronics, but he could go back and check. He seemed peeved by this answer but walked away without another word. About 10 minutes later, he comes up with a prepaid phone card and says there's no one at the register in electronics. So I activate his card and hand it to him, telling him to have a good night, but he pushes the card back at me without saying a word, and I say, "Is there something wrong?" To which he replies, "These minutes aren't on my phone yet, are they?" I was confused by this statement because of course they weren't. He had just bought the card. I shook my head and he waved the card in front of my face. "Why the fuck are you standing there? Reactivate my phone!" When he talked, he was so close I could smell his breath, and I was scared. I wanted to put in a call to a CSM so that someone would come down and help me. This is where I should probably mention that I am about 5'3" tall, and he is closer to probably 6'5" tall, and very stocky. So he was towering over me, and the thought that he could easily overpower crossed my mind. But I get so nervous whenever men yell or cuss at me because my dad was never the type to yell or cuss. I took the card out of his hand, and he slammed his cell phone on the scanner. I was trying not to let him know that I was nervous, but I was terrified. I knew that I had never put minutes on a prepaid phone before, but I don't dare tell him that in fear of what he might do. So I read the directions, pick up his phone, dial the number, and as I'm putting in the card number, his phone runs out of minutes. I try to call back and I get an error message. I'm at a loss. I meekly hand him his phone back and say, "I'm sorry, something went wrong. I don't know what's happening." As soon as I say it, he takes his phone, opens it up, tries to dial someone, and when it doesn't work, he looks at me with furious eyes. He screams, "What the fuck did you do to my phone? What the fuck?" His voice is echoing in the store, and unfortunately, we haven't gotten the end of second shift rush yet, so there's no one around. He closes his phone and opens it again, trying to make another call, but when it doesn't work, he throws the phone down on the scanner again. He says, "I don't know what you did to my phone, but you'd better fucking fix it." But this comes much more quietly, practically a whisper. At this point, I'm worried he's going to put his hands on me, and I don't know what to do. I put in a call for a CSM for my register and I say, "I've called someone that might be able to help. But we're at shift change right now, so it might be faster for you to take it to the customer service desk." He picks up his phone off the podium, still mumbling under his breath that I fucked up his phone, and I'm hoping I can get out of there before he comes back. Or at least have someone else down at the self-check with me. Another 15 minutes go by, and I don't see him again. As I am picking up items that people left by the registers, getting ready to shut them down for the night, he comes back and stands by the podium. He still looks completely pissed off, and my stomach sank. He made that finger motion that means come here without saying anything. And for some reason, that makes me even more nervous. When I'm standing in front of him, he leans so close to my face that I think he's about to kiss me, or bite me, or God knows what. I try to take a step back, but he takes a step forward when I do. A creepy grin comes across his face as he says, "The girl up there fixed it, simple fix, but next time, I expect you to know what to do, understand?" I nod because I don't think I can speak. He gets impossibly closer before saying, "I'm sorry I raised my voice. I never should have done that, especially to a pretty girl like you." When he has that last part, he lightly uses his fingertips to brush my bangs to the side. I took a step back and he said, "Let me make it up to you. Let me buy you a drink." I shake my head. I say, "No thank you, I'm only 19. He says, "So we'll get a couple beers and go back to my place." Again, I shake my head. "No, really, it's okay. I'm not much of a drinker. I have an early morning tomorrow." He looks displeased with this answer and says, "Tell you what, I'll wait over here by the door just in case you change your mind." I smile at him weakly and tell him to have a good night. When I see him walk through the security things, I quickly shut down the registers and sign out of mine. Then I run over to find a CSM to tell about the whole thing. The third shift CSM that I tell looks at me like I'm lying, and when I'm finished says, "I know, man's name. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He doesn't have it in him. You're just being dramatic." She then turns to another, older cashier behind her, shakes her head and mumbles, "Teenagers." I ask if I can have someone walk me to my car, and they tell me that management is in a meeting and the security guy went home already. So I clocked out and went to the bathroom. I waited in the bathroom for about 10 minutes before coming out and attempting to go to my car. When I walked around the corner through the security things, he wasn't sitting on the bench right there like I'd been expecting. I relaxed a little, before I realized he was standing just outside the door, far enough away to keep it from closing, smoking a cigarette. He had his back turned to the door though. Luckily, I never went out the front doors. I always went down the corridor and out the side door. I quietly closed the door behind me, so maybe I wouldn't catch his attention. I rushed to my car, which was fortunately very close to the building. As I'm quick walking to my car, I hear him shout, "Hey, why are you avoiding me? Come here!" At this point, I take off into a full-on sprint, which is not easy because I'm wearing Sperry's. So it's like running in clogs. I get to my car, get in, lock the doors as I'm starting it, and don't even bother with my seatbelt. By that point, he had made it almost all the way to my car and was still yelling, telling me he just wanted to talk. I took off as fast as I could and took the longest way home, with the most turns and twists that I could. When I got home, I told my dad about the experience, and he was so angry that no one had answered my calls or believed me, he called the store manager the next day and complained. I was never contacted about his complaint, but from that night on, whenever I saw this guy, I would run to the bathroom, or if I couldn't get away, I would put out my lane closed sign and turn off my light so he couldn't get in my line. You always hear people talking about the people of Walmart as being trashy, but they never tell you that a select few are scary as hell.
Back when I was living with my mom, there was this clearly mentally handicapped 40-ish-year-old man living upstairs from us. During the time I'll tell you about, it was 17-year-old me, my mom, and my 7-year-old little sister. Now, my mom was always super creeped out by this man. He had a creepy vibe right off the bat. He just looked too hard and too long, smiled too readily, and got too close and too personal. But I always took him as harmless. Almost always. I'd go to the pool with my friends, and he'd be there and follow us around. He'd ask questions about school and my family. He'd give me compliments, all the regular creepy stuff, and when I left, he'd leave too. My mom stopped going to the pool. She had a similar experience, apparently. I told her this man is just a little off. He's like a child, that's all. No threat. I stayed out a little late once and was walking home. It was perhaps 2, maybe 3 a.m. As I crossed through the basketball courts, he greeted me by name and invited me to play with him. I said no, and he begged. I said no again, and he followed me a bit and begged some more, so I said, no, it's late, and he went home. So, yes, he was a creep, but not a threat. He seemed fine, until the day he broke into our house. I was babysitting my then-asleep sister, and it was perhaps 11 p.m. Much to my surprise, I hear a knock at the door. It was him, and he was trying to come in. I blocked the entrance and politely but firmly said no. He told me he was locked out and really needed to come in. Again, I said no. I explained that we were just kids and we couldn't have any strangers in, but offered to call a locksmith. He got a little frantic. He said he was a doctor, so I could trust him. Like, what? I'm 100% sure he wasn't a doctor, but still a strange thing to say. I told him again, sorry, but no. He said he and my mom were very close friends and to at least call and ask her. This isn't true, but I wanted to be nice. I called my mom knowing she'd say no. I told him to wait at the door and I'd go grab my phone and call. I went to close the door, but he quickly stuck his foot in the door. I told him to move his foot, and he just went to the "please let me in, I'm a doctor" thing again. I tried to kick his foot away, but he stayed firm. Now, this is when I took him as a threat. I was worried for me and my sister. I told him to move, and he ignored it and begged, "Me and your mom are best friends, please, I'm a doctor." I grabbed the door and slammed his foot. He pulled back out of pain. He was pounding on the other side, begging to come in. I called my mom, more out of fear now. She's freaking out and told me no matter what not to open the door. And I didn't. I told him through the door, "I'm sorry, but we're just kids and can't have anyone over." He said the same thing. "I'm a doctor. I promise I'm a doctor. You can trust me. I'm good friends with your mom." And banged on the door for a solid minute or so after, before eventually leaving.
So, my Psycho X stalker story happened on the west coast of the United States about 11 years ago. I was a 23-year-old female living in my very first apartment. I was single, working part-time and going to college, so I was more focused on getting my life together than dating. Valentine's Day was approaching, and of course, I didn't have a special someone in my life at the time. So a co-worker of mine thought it would be a good idea to hook me up with a single guy she knew, named Jack. Jack and I talked on the phone for a few days before meeting in person. When we eventually met, Jack brought flowers, candy, and told me immediately how attracted he was to me, even saying that I'm his girl now. It struck me as kind of an odd thing to say, as it was our first time meeting. But I thought he was really handsome. He was 6'1", I'm 5'3", he had a gorgeous smile, and really seemed sweet, so I just brushed the oddness off. We hung out for a few weeks, and during that time Jack started acting very strange and clingy. He was very quiet and liked to ask questions about me, and told me a lot about his personal life. But besides a simple hi, he basically ignored and never spoke to any of my family or friends who came to visit often. He always wanted to occupy my time, wanted to know what I was doing all the time, and would get angry if I was busy or had other plans. He wasn't physically abusive, but really possessive. He even told me he loved me, after a month or so of knowing me, but I laughed it off thinking he was joking around. One night, he actually got on his knees to propose to me. I told him we only been knowing each other for a few months, and we should wait until we're both ready, and besides, he didn't even have a ring. He said he was ready to get married as soon as possible. We can go to the courthouse now, and he'll buy me a ring later. No thank you. If it's meant to be, we'll get married when the time comes. The very next week, he gets back on his knees, proposes again, still no ring, and saying he was ready now. At this point I started to freak out. Not only was he clingy, but he was moving way too fast for me. I mean, we only been knowing each other a few months. I was still busy with work and school, so I told him maybe we should take a break from hanging out for a while. He got this really weird look on his face and got really quiet, but eventually started smiling and agreed with me that we should take a break. A few days of not hearing from him. I came home to find him sitting on my staircase. I asked what he was doing there, and he just said, "Waiting for you," and smiled. After an awkward moment of silence, I told him he needed to go home. He got up and left. But he started to randomly stop by my place. If I was there, I'd pretend not to be. He would knock for about 30 minutes, leave for a few minutes and come back. He started waiting on my staircase for me to get home so much, I had to hide in a neighbor's apartment and wait until he eventually left. He called my cell phone non-stop, and I just ignored him. After a couple of months of this, he just stopped all of a sudden. I was completely relieved, like he finally got the point. About 3 months of not hearing from him, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I answered and it was Jack. He wanted to know how I was doing and wanted to see me. He also said he told his mother about me and she wanted to meet me too. I got super creeped out and upset and I told him no, lose my number and stop calling me. I guess he heard the opposite because he started randomly knocking on my door again. He knocked on my door a couple of times each time, and I had a friend or family member tell him to leave and not come back, and each time he smiled and said okay. The third time he came over was the last straw for me. I had my best friend tell him I wasn't there. I was, but I was hiding. He asked her if he could wait inside my apartment until I got back. She told him no, and then he tried to push his way in. My friend called my name and I ran out to help her shut the door, heart racing. I told him I was going to call the police if he didn't leave, and to never come back again. He mumbled something through the door and then I could hear him walking down the stairs. I ended up not calling the police that night, but I regret that decision to this day. Jump forward, about 5 to 6 months later. It was a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon. 2 of my younger sisters, 17 and 14, were visiting. I was still laying in bed because I had a major migraine. Since I lived alone, I had gotten used to leaving my bathroom door open so I could hear everything. I could hear them watching and talking about Vanilla Sky, the Tom Cruise movie. I could also hear kids laughing and playing outside. Nothing weird whatsoever. I took more aspirin, then dozed off again, but was awakened shortly by a loud BAM! At first I thought maybe a kid bounced a ball or something off my door, but then I heard BAM! Again, and my sister started yelling, "What the hell is that?" Just as I was about to get up to go see what was going on. BAM! I heard screaming and then a man's voice yelling, "Get the fuck up!" I started to panic, so this part might sound kinda fucked up. But since I had no clue what was going on or who the person or persons were, I slowly closed my door, blocked it with a dresser, sat on the floor in front of the dresser and called 911. In my state of mind, I thought it would be better to get the police over ASAP instead of risking my life even further by running into an unknown situation. Maybe this intruder didn't know it was a third person there. Anyway, I told the operator someone broken into my apartment, and sounded like he was threatening my sisters, and that the police needed to come quick. The operator asked me a lot of questions about how many or what the intruder or intruders looked like. But of course I couldn't say because I was still laying in my bed when it started. While I'm speaking to the 911 operator, I could hear a guy's voice asking, "Where's your sister? She doesn't know what I had to do for her. I love her." I heard more screams and then I heard, "She's in the room." At that point my heart started beating triple time. I don't know why they told this person where I was, maybe just out of pure terror. or maybe getting me back for not coming out of my room to check on the situation. But next thing you know, my bedroom door was being kicked hard. So hard I actually thought I had started sliding across the floor. The intruder stops kicking my door and says, "If you don't open the door right now, I'm killing everybody." I was so damn scared. Literally crying, begging, and asking the 911 operator where the police were at. The whole ordeal was only about 5 minutes, but in a situation like this, time slows way down, and it seemed like it went on for hours. I guess the intruder must have heard me talking to 911 because all of a sudden he stopped and took off running out the apartment. I was still on the phone, crying with the door shut, and one of my sisters knocked it and said it was okay to come out now, because he's gone. I opened my door and was like, "Who the fuck is he?" They said Jack. I couldn't believe it. In broad daylight, Jack kicked in my door with a sawed-off shotgun and threatened to kill my sisters and myself. The police ended up catching him about a week or so later. During this time, I found out through the police report that there was a previous incident that occurred with Jack a couple of weeks before my incident. The police were called because someone was shooting a shotgun in the air. When the police arrived, they found Jack holding the gun. They asked why, and Jack said because someone broke into his apartment, stole his weed, and cut the tip of his tongue. Not kidding. The police just issued him a ticket. Anyway, I actually helped catch him by giving them one of his family members' address that I found in the phone book, and they caught him headed to their house. He confessed right there, but after he was arrested he pleaded not guilty, but ended up taking a plea and only ended up serving 5 years. I moved to a different state after that. An even scarier part is I found out that when he got released, he moved into a halfway house literally right down the street from my old apartment, where he kicked my door in. 11 years have passed and I still don't feel completely safe. I feel at any moment I could run into him randomly or hear my door being kicked in again. I keep moving constantly. I change my number every year. I carry pepper sprays and tasers with me everywhere I go. And I never go to bed without checking if the doors and windows were locked at night. I still even put a chair under the doorknob before I go to sleep at night. So, to Jack, who tried to kill me and my family, you're a piece of shit. I wish your psychotic ass would have rotten away in prison. I hope to never, ever, ever meet you again for the rest of my life. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for watching my collaboration special. Special thanks goes of course to LadySpook. Ah, good, I got it right this time. I kept calling her Lady Spooky, and that's just not right. So very special thanks, as I said, to LadySpook for all her very hard work and the most excellent audio, and the great stories she found to share with us. I had a great time doing it, and I hope we can do it again sometime. Also, if you enjoyed LadySpook's story, click on over down below to her channel to hear more, and of course like and subscribe. Also on LadySpook's channel you should find at some point in the next day or so there will be a video featuring me. I believe the next video I'm recording will be another paranormal video, so I hope those are being well received. That should be out either Friday or Saturday, let's say Saturday. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take good care of yourselves.